He hadn't eaten all day. His stomach growled, but his eyes stayed fixed on the shivering couple sitting by the diner window. Their clothes were worn, their hands trembling over empty cups. Most people walked past without a glance. But not him. He clutched his small paper bag, the only meal he could afford that week, and took a step toward them. What he did next would change more than just their day. It would set off a chain of events that no one could have imagined. A simple act of kindness from a hungry boy would reach doors he never knew existed, one of them belonging to a millionaire who hadn't felt compassion in years. But how did a boy with nothing end up teaching an entire town about humanity? And why did that knock on his door shake everyone who heard about it? This isn't just a story about food or hunger, it's about what happens when the smallest act of love meets a world that's forgotten. It was supposed to be just another evening in the quiet neighborhood of Pineville. 12-year-old Malik walked home from school, his backpack half-zipped, shoes worn from miles of walking. His mother worked double shifts at the diner downtown, and dinner, if there was any, usually came from whatever she brought back after closing. Malik never complained. He knew how hard she worked, and he had learned early that gratitude mattered more than comfort. The town wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. People saw Malik's dark skin before they saw the boy, a quiet kid who loved reading old library books and sketching in the dirt behind his building. At school, he blended in just enough to avoid trouble. Still, he noticed the whispers, the looks, the way the lunch lady's tone changed when she reminded him his meal card was empty again. That afternoon, as he pushed open the door to the diner, the smell of fried food and coffee filled the air, wrapping around him like hope. But then, he saw them, an elderly couple huddled near the window, sharing a cup of water, pretending not to be hungry. The waitress avoided their table, customers looked away. Malik froze, his stomach tight. He didn't know them, but something about their quiet desperation struck him deeply. He held his paper bag a little tighter, feeling the warmth through the thin wrapper. It was all he had for the night. But in that moment, Malik stood in the doorway of the diner, clutching the paper bag against his chest. The bell above the door jingled, but no one looked up. The hum of conversation filled the air, plates clinking, laughter from the corner booth, but it all felt far away. His eyes stayed on the old couple by the window. They looked tired, defeated, and invisible. He walked slowly toward them, his heart pounding. The man's hands shook as he tried to sip from an empty cup. The woman gave a faint smile, the kind people you. At first, they didn't move. Then the woman's eyes welled up. She reached for his hand, but before she could thank him, a voice cut through the room. "Hey!" The waitress, a woman in her 40s with a sharp voice, stormed over. "You can't be bothering customers," she snapped. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Malik froze, confused. "I wasn't," he started, but she interrupted. "Don't play innocent. We don't need trouble in here." A man from another table muttered something under his breath. Malik heard the word thief. His throat tightened. "I was just giving them enough," the waitress said, grabbing the bag off the table. She looked inside, then tossed it in the trash. "If you can't afford to eat, don't come in here pretending you can help others." The couple tried to speak up. He stumbled outside into the cold. His stomach growled again, but the hunger wasn't what hurt most, it was the shame. He walked fast, eyes on the ground, until he reached the cracked steps of his apartment building. When he got home, his mother was still at work. He sat on the couch, replaying everything in his head. How quickly kindness had turned into humiliation. How a room full of people saw him not as a boy trying to help, but as someone who didn't. Later that night, there was a knock on the door. Malik jumped. It was the old man from the diner, holding the same paper bag, cleaned up, with the food still inside. "They threw it away," he said softly, "but we couldn't let that kindness go to waste." Malik didn't know what to say. The man smiled. "People can be cruel, son. But you reminded us that goodness still exists." Then, another voice echoed down the hallway. "Is that the kid?" A man in a suit stood behind them, curious, holding his phone like he'd been recording. Malik didn't recognize him, but something about the way he watched made his stomach twist. The old man noticed too and quickly led the boy back inside. What Malik didn't know was that the stranger had seen everything in the diner. He'd filmed it, the way the waitress scolded him, the whispers, the way a child's act of kindness was treated as a nuisance. By morning, the video had spread across town. People called it the boy who gave everything. Some praised him, others mocked him. But the part that hurt most was how few mentioned the way he was treated, how easily cruelty had found a target in a hungry black child. At school, Malik felt the difference. Some kids smiled at him like he was famous. Others whispered behind his back. Even teachers looked at him with that same mix of pity and pride that made him feel like an exhibit. He didn't want attention. He just wanted to be seen for who. Only, Malik had no idea that the next knock on his door would come from a millionaire, and that it wouldn't be a visit of charity, but of reckoning. The next morning, Malik woke to pounding on the door. His mother, still half asleep from her night shift, rushed to open it. On the other side stood the man in the suit, the same stranger from the hallway. Cameras flashed behind him, reporters' voices overlapping. "Are you the boy from the diner?" someone shouted. Malik froze. His mother looked from the crowd to her son, confused and protective. "What's going on?" she demanded. The man stepped forward, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "My name's Charles Bennett," he said. "I saw what your son did. The whole country has, actually." He turned, gesturing to a news van idling on the curb. "We'd like to tell his story." Before Malik could speak, the cameras were already rolling. Neighbors peeked through doors and windows. Reporters called his name. They wanted to hear about the kind-hearted boy who gave up his meal. But when Malik tried to talk about how the waitress treated him, his story wasn't about fame or kindness for show. It was about how a black kid trying to do good was treated like a problem. But no one wanted that part. They wanted the version that made them feel better, not the truth that made them uncomfortable. Charles put a hand on his shoulder for the cameras. "This young man reminds us all that goodness has no color," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. Applause erupted from the small crowd. But behind the flash of lights, Malik's eyes filled. He wasn't a symbol. He was a boy who'd been humiliated and misunderstood and was now used to make others feel righteous. His mother saw it too, how his smile didn't reach his eyes. Later that evening, as the crowd left and the street quieted, Charles returned alone. He held an envelope. "I want to help," he said softly. "This is a scholarship. A chance at something better." Malik didn't reach for it. "Better for whom?" he asked. His voice trembled. "You didn't care when they threw away my food. You cared when people started watching." Charles said nothing. For the first time, his confident expression cracked. Malik's mother stepped forward, taking her son's hand. "You can't buy what he gave," she said quietly. "And you can't fix what this world keeps breaking by writing checks." The silence hung heavy. Charles looked down at the envelope, then back at the boy, realizing he wasn't just facing a child, but a mirror. As he turned to leave, Malik spoke one last time. "You asked for my story," he said. "But you never wanted to hear it." The door closed behind him, and the sound echoed louder than the camera. What began as a simple act of kindness had become a reflection of something far bigger, how the same world that shamed him was now trying to celebrate him, without ever admitting why. And as Malik stood by the window, watching the van drive away, one thought lingered in his mind. Would they still care if the cameras weren't rolling? Days passed. The news cycle moved on, and the world found a new story to share, a new moment to celebrate and forget. But for Malik, the noise never fully faded. The video of him giving up his meal still floated around online, edited. His mother later framed a clipping from the newspaper, "Boy's act of kindness inspires town." But beneath it, she wrote her own words, "It's not about what he gave, it's about what others refuse to see." And that became the real story. Because what happened in that diner wasn't just about one boy or one act of racism, it was about the everyday moments where humanity is tested and, too often, fails. How easily society overlooks those who are struggling. How quick we are to celebrate kindness when it makes us look good, but ignore injustice